Hey, you guys ever wonder what makes Scorpio so magnetic but also kinda intense? Scorpio is that sign that pulls you in with their mystery and loyalty. But they've got shadows most folks don't dare mention. Jealousy that burns, a hint of revenge, a need for control. These little flaws are real, and we're gonna unpack them with love. Let's dive into 20 reasons that reveal Scorpio's dark side, but also help you get this sign like never before. So, you really think you know Scorpio's shadows? Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from so we can vibe on this journey together. Reason 1. Consuming jealousy. Scorpio's like a fire that warms but can scorch if it gets out of hand. Their jealousy comes from an intensity that wants to protect what they love, but it can go overboard. They create a connection so deep that any threat feels like a personal attack. Ever seen a Scorpio shoot that look when someone gets too close? That loyalty is authentic, but it stalls evolution when it turns possessive. You know that gut punch when you imagine betrayal? Scorpio feels it times 10 with emotion. Like the world might crumble. They might grill a friend or partner over an innocent text. Try joking with a Scorpio about someone else. They'll laugh, but their radar's already on. That connection to what's theirs is powerful, but it can suffocate. Scorpio's jealousy isn't petty. It's a reflection of their passionate heart. They live with authenticity, wanting to ensure nobody steals what they've earned. Ever noticed how a Scorpio goes quiet, but their eyes say it all? That intensity builds strong bonds, but it can intimidate. They inspire you to protect, but show the risk of overdoing control. Behind this fire is a soul that fears losing what they cherish. Scorpio dives into jealousy with freedom, like watching out is the same as caring. Picture this. A Scorpio might check someone's phone, just to be sure. That emotion is pure innovation and passion, but it challenges their connection to trust. And trust me, that protectiveness also shows in how they hold grudges. Scorpios like a guardian defending their treasure with claws out. They get jealous with intensity, wanting to keep everything locked down. Ever seen a Scorpio's mood shift over a suspicion? That authenticity is a call to love, but also a heads up. And speaking of holding on, have you noticed their revenge streak? Reason 2. Tendency for revenge. Scorpios like a strategist plotting every move with precision. Their tendency for revenge comes from wounded loyalty that doesn't let betrayals slide. They create a connection with justice that can turn into obsession. Ever seen a Scorpio hit back even years later? That intensity is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when someone hurts you and you daydream about payback? Scorpio doesn't just dream. They plan with emotion, waiting for the perfect moment. They might hold a grudge from a coworker and strike months later. Try betraying a Scorpio's trust. They'll forgive to your face, but the plot's already brewing. That connection to retaliation is magnetic, but it can be cold. Scorpio's revenge comes from a heart that can't stand disloyalty. They live with authenticity. Like forgiving without striking back is weakness. Ever noticed how a Scorpio never forgets a slight? That loyalty builds deep bonds, but it can poison them. They inspire you to stand up for yourself, but show the risk of getting consumed. Behind this strategy is a soul that craves balance. Scorpio schemes with freedom, like revenge restores order. Picture this. A Scorpio might ghost someone who hurt them, but make sure to shine in front of them later. That innovation in emotion is fascinating, but it challenges their connection to peace. And trust me, that also shows in their need for control. Scorpios like a chess game where every move is calculated. They seek revenge with intensity, wanting to prove nobody fools them. Ever seen a Scorpio dish out payback with a smirk? That authenticity is a call to be strong, but also a warning. And speaking of calling shots, have you noticed their control issues? Reason 3. Need for control. Scorpios like a conductor who wants to direct every note in the orchestra. Their need for control comes from an intensity that seeks security in everything. They create a connection that organizes, but it can smother those nearby. Ever seen a Scorpio try to call the shots on every detail of a plan? That loyalty to control is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you need everything to go your way to feel okay? Scorpio takes it seriously with emotion. Like chaos is the enemy. They might plan every step of a date, leaving no room for spontaneity. Try changing a Scorpio's setup. They'll look at you like it's personal. That connection to order is powerful, but it can limit. Scorpio's control comes from a heart that fears the unexpected. They live with authenticity, wanting to dominate to protect what they love. Ever noticed how a Scorpio likes to know everything about you? That intensity builds strong bonds, but it can feel intrusive. They inspire you to lead, but show the risk of holding too tight. Behind this obsession is a soul that wants to avoid surprises. Scorpio commands with freedom, like letting go is dangerous. Picture this. A Scorpio might insist on leading a project, even with better ideas out there. That emotion is pure innovation in protection, but it challenges their connection to flexibility. And trust me, that also shows in how they struggle to forgive. Scorpio's like a captain who never drops the helm. Even in calm waters, they control with intensity, wanting everything under their thumb. Ever seen a Scorpio get annoyed when something slips their plan? That authenticity is a call to be firm, but also a heads up. And speaking of holding on, have you noticed how they don't forgive? Reason 4. Struggle to forgive. Scorpios like a fortress storing every wound with care. Their struggle to forgive comes from loyalty that sees betrayal as a deep cut. They create a connection that protects, but it can lock their heart shut. Ever seen a Scorpio cut someone out of their life over a grudge? That intensity is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when a slight keeps nagging at you? Scorpio carries it with emotion. Like forgiving would erase the lesson. They might recall a years-old fight like it was yesterday. Try apologizing to a Scorpio. They might accept, but their eyes say they haven't forgotten. That connection to memory is powerful, but it can weigh heavy. Scorpio's struggle comes from a heart that puts trust above all. They live with authenticity, like forgiving is lowering their guard. Ever noticed how a Scorpio talks about someone who hurt them with ice in their voice? That loyalty builds eternal bonds, but also grudges. They inspire you to stay true, but show the risk of shutting down. Behind these walls is a soul that fears getting hurt again. Scorpio holds grudges with freedom, like forgiveness is a gamble. Picture this. A Scorpio might avoid someone for years over something already settled. That emotion is pure innovation in protection, but it challenges their connection to lightness. And trust me, that also shows in their subtle manipulation. Scorpios like a bookmarking every torn page. They cling to hurts with intensity, wanting to shield themselves from the past. Ever seen a Scorpio keep their distance even after an apology? That authenticity is a call to be strong, but also a warning. And speaking of strategy, have you noticed their manipulation? Reason 5. Subtle manipulation. Scorpios like a chess master moving pieces without anyone noticing. Their subtle manipulation comes from intensity that knows how to sway with charm. They create a connection that guides, but it can mislead others. Ever seen a Scorpio talk you into something without you catching on? That loyalty to their goal is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when someone gets you to do something and you only realize later? Scorpio does that with emotion, using words and looks that mesmerize. They might suggest something for your own good, but with a plan behind it. Try saying no to a Scorpio. They'll wrap you up in a killer argument. That connection to influence is powerful, but it can deceive. Scorpio's manipulation comes from a heart that wants results. They live with authenticity, like steering others is second nature. Ever noticed how a Scorpio knows exactly what drives you? That intensity builds magnetic bonds, but it can cross lines. They inspire you to lead, but show the risk of over-controlling. Behind this skill is a soul that craves security. Scorpio manipulates with freedom, like shaping the scene is protection. Picture this. A Scorpio might nudge you to change your mind with a chat that seems harmless. That emotion is pure innovation in strategy, but it challenges their connection to transparency. And trust me, that also shows in the intensity that scares folks. Scorpios like a current pulling you without you feeling it. They influence with intensity, wanting to shape what's around them. Ever seen a Scorpio lead you their way with a smile? That authenticity is a call to be persuasive, but also a heads up. And speaking of force, have you noticed how their intensity freaks people out? Reason 6. Intensity that scares Scorpios like a storm that captivates but can spook anyone not ready. Their intensity is a flame that glows with emotion, but it can push folks away. They create a connection that draws in and repels at the same time. Ever seen a Scorpio stare at you like they see your soul? That authenticity is magnetic, but it breaks evolution. You know when someone pulls you in so much it gives you chills? Scorpio does that with loyalty, living everything with overwhelming passion. They can turn a simple chat into something way too deep. Try keeping things light with a Scorpio. They'll drag it to an existential talk. That connection to depth is powerful, but it can overload. Scorpio's intensity comes from a heart that doesn't do lukewarm. They live with authenticity, like every moment is life or death. Ever noticed how a Scorpio dives into everything with everything? That emotion builds unforgettable bonds, but it can scare. They inspire you to feel, but show the risk of going too far. Behind this force is a soul that wants to live to the fullest. Scorpio throws themselves in with freedom, like ease is a waste of time. Picture this. A Scorpio can turn a minor argument into an epic showdown. That innovation in passion is gripping, but it challenges their connection to calm. And trust me, that also shows in their obsession. Scorpio's like a volcano that enchants but scares off anyone too close. They live with intensity, wanting all or nothing. Ever seen a Scorpio make something simple feel huge? That authenticity is a call to feel, but also a warning. And speaking of diving in, have you noticed their obsession? Reason 7. Obsession with details. Scorpios like a detective who won't let a single clue slip by. Their obsession with details comes from intensity that wants to understand everything deeply. They create a connection that uncovers, but it can get lost in the small stuff. Ever seen a Scorpio analyze something to death? That loyalty to truth is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you can't drop something until you get every piece? Scorpio does that with emotion, like each detail is the key to the universe. They might spend hours picking apart a conversation or plan. Try giving a Scorpio vague info. They'll hit you with a million questions. That connection to depth is powerful, but it can tire. Scorpio's obsession comes from a heart that seeks control. They live with authenticity, like knowing everything is security. Ever noticed how a Scorpio spots things nobody else does? That intensity builds precise bonds, but it can be draining. They inspire you to notice, but show the risk of getting stuck. Behind this scrutiny is a soul that fears the unknown. Scorpio digs into details with freedom, like mastering them is power. Picture this. A Scorpio might revise a task 1,000 times, hunting for the perfect flaw. That emotion is pure innovation in searching, but it challenges their connection to the big picture. And trust me, that also shows in their emotional reserve. Scorpios like a map marking every corner with precision. They observe with intensity, wanting to crack the world open. Ever seen a Scorpio get lost in something tiny? That authenticity is a call to be thorough, but also a heads up. And speaking of holding back, have you noticed their reserve? Reason 8. Emotional reserve. Scorpios like a fortress with high walls, guarding their heart. Their emotional reserve comes from loyalty that only opens with total trust. They create a connection that captivates but keeps distance. Ever seen a Scorpio hide their feelings like a secret? That intensity is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you want to open up but fear holds you back? Scorpio does that with emotion, bottling up what they feel until they're sure. They might seem cold, even when burning inside. Try asking a Scorpio how they're doing. They'll say, "I'm good," but their eyes tell another story. That connection to mystery is powerful, but it can isolate. Scorpio's reserve comes from a heart that's been hurt before. They live with authenticity, like showing vulnerability is risky. Ever noticed how a Scorpio takes forever to open up, even with friends? That loyalty builds deep bonds, but slowly. They inspire you to protect, but show the risk of shutting down too much. Behind these walls is a soul that fears betrayal. Scorpio holds back with freedom, like silence is their shield. Picture this. A Scorpio might dodge talking about a problem, even needing help. That emotion is pure innovation in protection, but it challenges their connection to openness. And trust me, that also shows in their constant suspicion. Scorpios like a locked book that only opens for a few. They hold back with intensity, wanting to shield themselves from the world. Ever seen a Scorpio keep secrets even from those they trust? That authenticity is a call to be cautious, but also a warning. And speaking of caution, have you noticed their suspicion? Reason 9. Constant suspicion. Scorpios like a detective seeing clues where there aren't any. Their constant suspicion comes from intensity that wants to dodge any betrayal. They create a connection that watches, but it can judge without cause. Ever seen a Scorpio question something totally innocent? That loyalty is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you suspect someone without a clear reason? Scorpio does that with emotion, like everyone's got a hidden agenda. They might doubt a friendship over a silly comment. Try telling a Scorpio something. They'll dissect every word. That connection to caution is powerful, but it can push people away. Scorpio's suspicion comes from a heart that's been burned. They live with authenticity, like watching out is the same as protecting. Ever noticed how a Scorpio always seems one step ahead? That intensity builds secure bonds, but it can hurt. They inspire you to stay sharp, but show the risk of seeing shadows where there's none. Behind this distrust is a soul that fears being fooled. Scorpio scans with freedom, like relaxing is a trap. Picture this. A Scorpio might ask, "What did you mean by that?" over something simple. That emotion is pure innovation in defense, but it challenges their connection to trust. And trust me, that also shows in their pride. Scorpios like a guard who never lowers the weapon. They suspect with intensity, wanting to shield themselves from everything. Ever seen a Scorpio doubt someone without proof? That authenticity is a call to be careful, but also a heads up. And speaking of shielding, have you noticed their pride? Reason 10. Pride. That isolates Scorpios like a mountain that won't bend, even in a storm. Their pride comes from loyalty that refuses to bow down. They create a connection that commands respect, but it can push others away. Ever seen a Scorpio choose solitude over asking for help? That intensity is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you'd rather suffer alone than admit you need someone? Scorpio does that with emotion, like asking for support is weakness. They might shut down after a fight just to avoid giving in. Try offering help to a Scorpio. They'll turn it down, even if they're struggling. That connection to strength is powerful, but it can be lonely. Scorpio's pride comes from a heart that values its own power. They live with authenticity, like bending would mean losing themselves. Ever noticed how a Scorpio keeps their head high, even when broken? That loyalty builds striking bonds, but it can raise walls. They inspire you to stand tall, but show the risk of isolating. Behind this pride is a soul that fears looking weak. Scorpio shuts off with freedom, like solitude is better than humiliation. Picture this: a Scorpio might ghost a friend out of pride, even missing them. That emotion is pure innovation and resilience, but it challenges their connection to others. And trust me, that also shows in their possessiveness. Scorpio's like a king who won't share the throne even alone. They take pride with intensity, wanting to keep their fortress intact. Ever seen a Scorpio pull away instead of compromising? That authenticity is a call to be firm, but also a warning. And speaking of holding tight, have you noticed their possessiveness? Reason 11. Possessiveness in relationships. Scorpios like a guardian who won't let go of what they've claimed. Their possessiveness comes from intensity that wants to keep everything close. No gaps. They create a connection that protects, but it can smother those they love. Ever seen a Scorpio demand total exclusivity in a relationship? That loyalty is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you want someone all to yourself? No sharing. Scorpio feels that with emotion. Like sharing means losing. They might get uneasy if a partner goes out without a heads up. Try giving a Scorpio space. They'll agree, but their look says, "Where were you?" That connection to exclusivity is powerful, but it can weigh heavy. Scorpio's possessiveness comes from a heart that loves with everything. They live with authenticity, like the other person is part of them. Ever noticed how a Scorpio marks their presence in the lives of those they love? That intensity builds deep bonds, but it can scare. They inspire you to commit, but show the risk of caging. Behind this clinginess is a soul that fears betrayal. Scorpio holds tight with freedom, like letting go is a gamble. Picture this: a Scorpio might want every detail of their partner's day, just to feel secure. That emotion is pure innovation and protection, but it challenges their connection to freedom. And trust me, that also shows in their memory for grudges. Scorpios like a chain wrapping around those they love, sometimes too tight. They get possessive with intensity, wanting everything locked down. Ever seen a Scorpio get antsy over something small? That authenticity is a call to love, but also a heads up. And speaking of memory, have you noticed their grudge holding? Reason 12. Elephant memory for grudges. Scorpios like an archive storing every hurt with precision. Their memory for grudges comes from loyalty that never forgets who crossed them. They create a connection that protects, but it can carry old weights. Ever seen a Scorpio bring up something from years ago? That intensity is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when a slight sticks in your mind? Scorpio holds onto it with emotion. Like every hurt is an eternal lesson. They might recite a past fight with creepy detail. Try touching a sore spot with a Scorpio. They'll recall everything. That connection to the past is powerful, but it can drag. Scorpio's memory comes from a heart that values justice. They live with authenticity, like forgetting is forgiving without reason. Ever noticed how a Scorpio relives a grudge like it's fresh? That loyalty builds strong bonds, but also resentment. They inspire you to remember, but show the risk of carrying too much. Behind this recall is a soul that fears repeating mistakes. Scorpio stores grudges with freedom, like each hurt is a protective map. Picture this: a Scorpio might avoid someone over something from high school. That emotion is pure innovation and defense, but it challenges their connection to the present. And trust me, that also shows in their demand for loyalty. Scorpios like a book that never erases its pages. They remember hurts with intensity, wanting to shield themselves from the past. Ever seen a Scorpio talk about an old slight with so much emotion? That authenticity is a call to be firm, but also a warning. And speaking of demanding, have you noticed their loyalty obsession? Reason 13. Demand for absolute loyalty. Scorpios like an oath that accepts no half measures. Their demand for absolute loyalty comes from intensity that sees trust as all or nothing. They create a connection that binds, but it can pressure too much. Ever seen a Scorpio test someone's loyalty? That emotion is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you expect someone to be 100% ride or die, no slip-ups. Scorpio demands that with loyalty, like any mistake is betrayal. They might ditch a friend over a minor goof. Try letting a Scorpio down. They'll give you a chill that cuts. That connection to fidelity is powerful, but it can be rigid. Scorpio's demand comes from a heart that can't handle disloyalty. They live with authenticity, like trust is the foundation of life. Ever noticed how a Scorpio watches your every move? That intensity builds eternal bonds, but also high expectations. They inspire you to stay true, but show the risk of asking too much. Behind this expectation is a soul that fears being played. Scorpio demands with freedom, like loyalty is their armor. Picture this. A Scorpio might end a friendship over a poorly explained rumor. That emotion is pure innovation in protection, but it challenges their connection to flexibility. And trust me, that also shows in their stubbornness. Scorpios like a pact with no loopholes. They demand loyalty with intensity, wanting total commitment. Ever seen a Scorpio get hurt over something small? That authenticity is a call to be real, but also a heads up. And speaking of standing firm, have you noticed their stubbornness? Reason 14, relentless stubbornness. Scorpios like a rock that won't budge, even against the wind. Their stubbornness comes from intensity that defends their beliefs with everything. They create a connection that inspires, but it can block dialogue. Ever seen a Scorpio stick to an idea, even when wrong? That loyalty is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you won't back down, even knowing you're off? Scorpio does that with emotion, like changing their mind is defeat. They might argue for hours just to hold their ground. Try convincing a Scorpio of something. They'll challenge you to the end. That connection to conviction is powerful, but it can be rigid. Scorpio's stubbornness comes from a heart that treasures its truth. They live with authenticity, like yielding is losing themselves. Ever noticed how a Scorpio defends something with fire? That intensity builds striking bonds, but it can push people away. They inspire you to stand firm, but show the risk of closing off. Behind this grit is a soul that fears looking weak. Scorpio holds fast with freedom, like stubbornness is their strength. Picture this. A Scorpio might fight over a work decision, even with better options out there. That emotion is pure innovation in conviction, but it challenges their connection to openness. And trust me, that also shows in their intimidating magnetism. Scorpios like a river that won't change course, even with obstacles. They stick with intensity, wanting to keep their truth. Ever seen a Scorpio hold an idea to the bitter end? That authenticity is a call to be strong, but also a warning. And speaking of strength, have you noticed their magnetism? Reason 15, intimidating magnetism. Scorpios like a magnet that pulls you in, but spooks you if you get too close. Their magnetism comes from intensity that captivates, but it can overwhelm. They create a connection that charms, but also challenges. Ever seen a Scorpio own a room just by walking in? That emotion is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when someone hooks you with a look that feels like it reads you? Scorpio does that with loyalty, radiating a vibe nobody ignores. They can silence a crowd just by showing up. Try chatting with a Scorpio. You'll feel them sizing you up. That connection to charisma is powerful, but it can intimidate. Scorpio's magnetism comes from a heart that lives with passion. They live with authenticity, like every move is a statement. Ever noticed how a Scorpio always seems in charge? That intensity builds unforgettable bonds, but it can scare off. They inspire you to shine, but show the risk of overshadowing. Behind this aura is a soul that knows its power. Scorpio draws people in with freedom, like mystery is their weapon. Picture this. A Scorpio can win you over with one line, but leave you second guessing. That emotion is pure innovation and charisma, but it challenges their connection to ease. And trust me, that also shows in their extreme emotions. Scorpios like a flame that hypnotizes, but burns if you get too close. They attract with intensity, wanting to be noticed. Ever seen a Scorpio steal the show without trying? That authenticity is a call to be bold, but also a heads up. And speaking of extremes, have you noticed their emotions? Reason 16, extreme emotions. Scorpios like an ocean swinging from calm to storm in seconds. Their extreme emotions come from intensity that knows no middle ground. They create a connection that grips, but it can throw things off balance. Ever seen a Scorpio go from passion to ice in a blink? That loyalty to feeling is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you feel everything so hard it's like you'll burst? Scorpio lives that with emotion, like every feeling is do or die. They might love you fiercely today and shut down tomorrow. Try arguing with a Scorpio. They'll surprise you with the heat of their reaction. That connection to the heart is powerful, but it can spook. Scorpio's emotions come from a heart that can't be shallow. They live with authenticity, like feeling less is betrayal. Ever noticed how a Scorpio swings from thrill to gloom with everything? That intensity builds deep bonds, but it can be exhausting. They inspire you to feel, but show the risk of burning out. Behind these extremes is a soul that wants to live fully. Scorpio feels with freedom, like balance is boring. Picture this. A Scorpio might praise you like poetry, then ghost you if they're hurt. That innovation and passion is gripping, but it challenges their connection to stability. And trust me, that also shows in their silent self-destruction. Scorpios like a volcano that erupts or sleeps. No in between. They feel with intensity, wanting to live everything to the max. Ever seen a Scorpio's mood flip out of nowhere? That authenticity is a call to feel, but also a warning. And speaking of burning, have you noticed their self-destruction? Reason 17. Silent self-destruction. Scorpios like a flame burning inside, unseen by anyone. Their self-destruction comes from intensity that hides pain in secret. They create a connection that seems strong but masks weaknesses. Ever seen a Scorpio suffer quietly, even looking fine? That loyalty to pride is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you swallow pain to avoid seeming weak? Scorpio does that with emotion, carrying weights nobody guesses. They might blame themselves for something and never spill. Try asking a Scorpio if they're okay. They'll say, "Yep," even when shattered. That connection to strength is powerful, but it can hurt. Scorpio's self-destruction comes from a heart that won't ask for help. They live with authenticity, like suffering alone is noble. Ever noticed how a Scorpio vanishes when they're down? That intensity builds mysterious bonds, but it can isolate. They inspire you to endure, but show the risk of shutting off. Behind this silence is a soul that fears exposure. Scorpio hides pain with freedom, like showing weakness is dangerous. Picture this. A Scorpio might sink into dark thoughts without reaching out. That emotion is pure innovation and endurance, but it challenges their connection to healing. And trust me, that also shows in their trust issues. Scorpios like a fortress crumbling from within. They hurt with intensity, wanting to face everything solo. Ever seen a Scorpio hide a massive pain? That authenticity is a call to be tough, but also a heads up. And speaking of guarding, have you noticed their trust struggles? Reason 18. Struggle to trust Scorpios like a safe that only opens with the right key. Their struggle to trust comes from loyalty that's been betrayed too many times. They create a connection that tests, but it can keep distance. Ever seen a Scorpio take forever to open up, even with someone close? That intensity is authentic, but it stalls evolution. You know when you want to trust, but something holds you back. Scorpio feels that with emotion, like every person is a potential risk. They might take months to share a secret. Try earning a Scorpio's trust. They'll watch you like a hawk. That connection to caution is powerful, but it can isolate. Scorpio's distrust comes from a heart that's been scarred. They live with authenticity, like trusting is a leap into the dark. Ever noticed how a Scorpio analyzes everything before committing? That loyalty builds lasting bonds, but slowly. They inspire you to protect, but show the risk of closing off. Behind this barrier is a soul that fears being played. Scorpio test with freedom, like trust is a rare treasure. Picture this. A Scorpio might avoid partnerships, scared of being stabbed in the back. That emotion is pure innovation in defense, but it challenges their connection to openness. And trust me, that also shows in their sharp sarcasm. Scorpios like a door that only unlocks after a million tests. They distrust with intensity, wanting to shield themselves from the world. Ever seen a Scorpio doubt even those they love? That authenticity is a call to be careful, but also a warning. And speaking of cutting, have you noticed their sarcasm? Reason 19. Sharp sarcasm. Scorpios like a blade slicing with words disguised as jokes. Their sarcasm comes from intensity that uses humor as both shield and sword. They create a connection that entertains, but it can sting unintentionally. Ever seen a Scorpio drop a quip that hit too hard? That loyalty to wit is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you toss out a snarky comment to protect yourself? Scorpio does that with emotion. Like sarcasm is their armor. They might tease you in a way that makes you think twice. Try criticizing a Scorpio. They'll fire back with a zinger that stings. That connection to humor is powerful, but it can wound. Scorpio's sarcasm comes from a heart that sees everything. They live with authenticity, like laughing at pain is strength. Ever noticed how a Scorpio uses irony to disarm? That intensity creates memorable moments, but it can push people away. They inspire you to be clever, but show the risk of cutting too deep. Behind this wit is a soul that fears exposure. Scorpio jests with freedom, like sarcasm hides their vulnerability. Picture this. A Scorpio might jab at you with a joke, but they're just testing your reaction. That emotion is pure innovation in humor, but it challenges their connection to softness. And trust me, that also shows in their fixation. Scorpios like a mirror reflecting with a biting laugh. They jest with intensity, wanting to protect and strike. Ever seen a Scorpio shut you down with one line? That authenticity is a call to be sharp, but also a heads up. And speaking of focus, have you noticed their fixation? Reason 20, focus that turns to fixation. Scorpios like an arrow that won't veer from its target, even at a high cost. Their focus turns to fixation with intensity that chases goals relentlessly. They create a connection that inspires, but it can blind them to the sides. Ever seen a Scorpio dive into a plan until they burn out? That loyalty is authentic, but it breaks evolution. You know when you're so locked in you forget everything else? Scorpio does that with emotion, like the goal is their whole life. They might work non-stop on a project, ignoring their health. Try pulling a Scorpio off their focus. They'll brush you off like you're invisible. That connection to the target is powerful, but it can isolate. Scorpio's fixation comes from a heart that won't settle for less. They live with authenticity, like giving up is betrayal. Ever noticed how a Scorpio dives into a dream with everything? That intensity delivers epic results, but it can consume. They inspire you to push, but show the risk of losing balance. Behind this drive is a soul that fears failure. Scorpio chases with freedom, like stopping would kill their purpose. Picture this. A Scorpio might study something to exhaustion, just to be the best. That emotion is pure innovation and grit, but it challenges their connection to balance. So, what's stopping you from bringing this into your life? Scorpio's like a hunter who won't quit the chase, even drained. They fixate with intensity, wanting to win at all costs. Ever seen a Scorpio ignore everything for a goal? That authenticity is a call to be relentless, but also a heads up. So, what's it gonna take to understand these shadows and love Scorpio even more? So, what did you think of diving into these 20 shadows of Scorpio nobody talks about? They're pure magnetism, but these quirks show how intense and human they are, full of emotion and loyalty. Getting these shadows just makes us admire Scorpio even more, right? So, you think Scorpio's all mystery? Or have you spotted these shadows out there? Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and leave a comment with the city you're watching from so we can keep unpacking the signs together. Catch you next time. Let's keep this evolution going.